Okay, welcome to our podcast. This is Oliver.
And Rio.
And today we're going to talk about sound.
Yeah.
Sound of silence.
For example, yeah.
Or the sound of music. Going to talk about our sound.
Yeah, we wanted to talk about how our sound developed over just our career as a band.
About like the last
over the
10
lifespan
years.
of our band.
Like how we started do-it-yourself recording and went to the studio to Michael Wagner in Nashville. And ever since then, we went to Nashville
I think
to make an album.
Right from the beginning, we were not into do-it-yourself because the first demo we recorded, and we weren't even called WolveSpirit yet. We had a different name back then.
Yeah, we called Janus or Wolf's Voden.
Yeah, we changed the name a couple of times actually.
Yeah.
And we knew nothing about recording and just went to a little studio here in our town. And the guy who owned the studio is actually has died by now of cancer.
Yeah, poor Michael.
And that's where you went to. Like, there's just a little. I think it had like 3 or 4 rooms.
We actually knew nothing about recording.
It was actually quite a
time.
decent studio, I gotta say.
It was a decent studio and we knew nothing. We knew nothing about songwriting, to be honest.
No.
We wrote songs that, I don't know, seen today's standards for us were really crappy.
And I can remember, like, we recorded 3 songs that we wrote. And we weren't really satisfied with the result. But we took the blame, all went to the producer and mixer, or to poor Michael in that case. And looking back on it, that was just completely unfair because it was like 95% our own fault because we were just bloody beginners in songwriting and recording. And it couldn't sound good, you know, just because we as a band didn't have that sound yet. The only thing that that guy could have done better is like I think he forced us to play on click, and like that was really important for him. Like looking back on it, if I were him and a new band came to me, and I noticed that they can't play on click, like they don't have any routine, I would just let them play. Just record their song just like they would in their rehearsal space.
The reality is also that when you write songs and when you record songs, the impact is seldomly made on the production part, but it's like how good is the song in the first place and how well is it performed.
Yeah. And
the production is just like the last polish of all the good stuff you give into that song.
Well, I guess that's what you see with bands like, for example, the Black Keys. Like they kind of have a crappy sound, right? Like you can hear maybe a cat or a dog barking in the background sometimes, or stuff being moved. Like that's an absolute no-go if you want to have a clean production. So from that point of view, yeah, you can see that, you know, it's just about the feeling that you're recording. It's about the energy that you're recording. How good is your melody? How good is your songwriting in general? And your performance.
Exactly. And if you make a production too sterile, too perfect, then it just sounds boring.
Yeah.
That's what happens often with metal bands, like these power metal bands. They make the sound so pristine and so clean.
They're hyper-focused on the stuff that's not important.
And like everything is edited, like the bass drum is edited always on click. And it makes it a bit sterile to listen to, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Of course, there are people that like this kind of sound, but I'm not a huge fan of it.
But those people are not ready for the good stuff.
I wouldn't say that because techno music is all
those
about...
people have bad taste.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. That's another thing. Like music is always subjective. What person A likes could be awful for person B. So everything's subjective in art in general, or in life maybe even. But the next step we took after being kind of disappointed with our results from that little studio was doing the do-it-yourself approach. So we bought a little. I can remember we went into a store. It was back in 2000, I don't know, 8 or something like that.
We went to Thomann and bought a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we went there, but first we went to a store for MediaMarkt and just bought an Apple iMac.
Yeah, that was the first.
That was the
iMac
first
we bought.
purchase we did. And then an interface.
And Logic. We also bought Logic.
Yeah, and the interface was just a little Line 6, just for guitar. It was especially made for guitars because it had guitar modelers inside.
Yeah.
That by modern standards is probably crappy. Like nobody would use those.
Well, I wouldn't say that because there are some devices from the early 2000s that are used today because they sound so.
Yeah, they have a certain sound, right?
So retro.
Again, everything's subjective.
Like there's some digital delays from the early 2000s that are really sought after because they have this unique sound that could not be reproduced with simulations.
But 99.9% of the people would prefer a modern plugin.
I'm not sure about that. There's some people that are really into collecting gear and geeking out about certain gears and sounds. For instance, I'm skipping a bit forward a few years. We went to Andrea Tokic's studio, the Bomb Shelter in Nashville, to record Blue Eyes. And he was this analog freak. Everything he did was analog gear, and
for me that was the most fun production that we ever did. Was the Blue Eyes album.
It was a lot of fun because the experience for the musician was pleasant. It was not.
It was
first
challenging and at the same time satisfying. Like at the end of the day, we recorded like 3 to 5 songs a day, like the complete backing tracks. That's quite a lot actually. And at the end of the day,
and there's also like a feeling on this album, Blue Eyes.
Yeah.
In case you want to check it out, you can see it on discography. Blue Eyes. This album is called Blue Eyes, and it's completely recorded on analog tape and mastered analog. So everything from the first recording to the last step, everything is on analog gear, and it was also recorded live. And it's a really lively album. It's vivid and has a lot of rhythm changes. It's not on track on click all the time.
Off-grid.
It's off grid, and you just hear that. It's a lot of like playfulness in it, a lot of cheerfulness.
Yeah, it's all about the feel. Like I can remember the producer Andrea Tokic, like coming again and again into the room that we were tracking. So not the control. He came out of the control room and into the tracking room, and he just went like, especially with a drummer at that time, Daniel Scholz. He gave him like. He demanded him to play play more up. Like I didn't even know what that means at that time, but he was talking about the feeling, like to make that sound, the feel of the drum sound more up, like more happy or something.
Yeah. Andrea Tokic was all about the performance, and he had a lot of fun with us, and it was a lot of fun working with him because this approach was just like perform as good as you can live as a band, and then we just capture this moment and add some tracks on it, like vocals and some additional tracks.
But maybe let's go back chronologically.
Let's go back to 2008 when we started with self-recording.
Disappointed in the demos we made, we thought we can do this better on our own. So we went to do-it-yourself approach, bought the basic equipment, like SM57 and interface, Apple iMac, stuff like that, and eventually started recording what would become spirit metal. But there was like this, I don't want to say, I'm not going to name any names, but there was this person in our band at that time
Yeah.
who was extremely, like, how can I phrase this without sounding like
Let's call him Kevin. Just give
he
him
was
a name.
extremely difficult to work with.
Yeah,
It
it
got
was.
to the point where we almost ended up in a fist fight. Like you ended up in a fist fight.
I actually
with
hit him once in the face.
and me too. And you held me back from hitting him in the face because it was almost psychotic.
Yeah, I think we should start where we met Kevin. I'm gonna call him Kevin.
Yeah,
It's
let's
not his
call him
real
Kevin.
name, but
Because not everything was bad about Kevin, and I know that he has a good heart, and we were friends at the time, and we had a lot of good times. I just want to mention that.
It was also
So I don't want to talk shit about that person, and he does have his really good qualities, but it was just impossible to work together with him. But
he was also very generous at times, and
yeah,
he could have a good side to it.
mm-hmm.
But he also had this very dark side
Yeah,
of being
psychotic.
ill-tempered.
No, he was a psychotic person.
Yeah, also that he was choleric, like he yelled a lot when you were not his opinion, and he made things complicated, much more complicated than they actually should have been. I think he is some kind of mad genius. Like he had his genius stroke
I
of
see him
genius.
the same way. Yeah,
Like he was brilliant,
and maybe if he hears this podcast, I hope he doesn't like see us now as enemies or something.
I don't
Because
think
that's
so.
not the way that I think we feel about him, you know.
Yeah.
But let's get back to what you wanted to say.
When we met Kevin, and after we started with this do yourself.
That name is just so stupid.
I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry to all the Kevins out there. It's not a stupid name.
When we started
not
with
called
the
Kevin.
recording our own album, and thought, okay, we could do it better. We do it ourselves in our basement.
Yeah.
And then came along Kevin. He said, he promised us, I'm this really great producer, and I can produce the greatest album, and I have methods that nobody else is using.
Yeah.
And we were young and didn't know.
And we believed him.
Just believed in that he was really good at what he does. But the thing with Kevin was that he made it too complicated. He had this sound ideal, and if there was for instance, the microphone on the speaker, on the guitar speaker, was moved just an inch, then everything had to be redone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, completely. Everything had to be complete. Even the bass part had to be played completely new, because it interchanged with the guitar sound, you know. And he was hyper-focused, like we said, hyper-focused on the wrong stuff. He was hyper-focused on Volvox cables. Only Volvox cables had to be used. No other cables. He had me play, because he said the shorter the signal path is from the guitar to your amp, the better, right? Which is true. Yeah. So what ended up is my cable was about this long to the amp. So I was sitting right like this next to the amp, completely cramped and completely unrelaxed. How am I supposed to give a good performance like that?
We should also mention that Kevin lived with us a few years. So we had this living community, sort of like an artist community, where we lived and worked together.
Mm-hmm.
And that made things a bit more complicated also, because where you were much more attached on an emotional level, and you knew once much deeper than you would just work with somebody professionally.
So anyway, we kind of struggled through that production.
Yep.
And
it took us about 3 years to finish this.
Really?
We started
Wow,
2009.
Didn't even know that anymore.
I think we started in the middle of 2009 and then finished 2011.
Well, I can remember at the end of the album, I didn't care about the sound anymore. Like, I just wanted it to be finished. It took so long. Like, I didn't even remember it took 3 years, but I knew it took too long, way too long, that I just wanted it to be done and demo it to labels. Send,
We
what do you call it?
We ended up finding a label in Greece, and at that time it was just a few years after the what's it called, the crash, the bank crash.
Oh yeah, that
The
crisis.
housing crisis in America, which influenced also Greece and made them bankrupt. And I can remember we went to Greece to meet the label manager, or label CEO, and it was just like this one room. Like, we expected a bigger label, but it was just like this one-man show in the middle of somewhere of Greece.
But it was actually a really nice trip down there.
I liked the landscape.
Yeah.
But it was also, you notice, like, the people are
really, really good food.
The food was awesome.
Like, I can remember eating those potatoes and just all the vegetables. Just taste so awesome.
So we ended up releasing Spirit Metal with this Greece album, Greek label, I mean, Spirit Metal. But to this day, we are not really proud of the album, so we pulled it off the market after the deal with the
I think
label
Sleazy
expired.
Rider Records still has some records which he is selling.
I think he's still selling them, yeah.
Even if, I don't know if he even still exists, to be honest. But a couple of years ago, he still did, and was selling some Spirit Metal.
But to this day, I cannot really listen to that album, because every time I listen to the songs, it just pulls me back in that time.
Yeah, me too.
It was a really traumatic time. I cannot begin to.
Yeah, we almost
explain.
broke up as a band a couple of times.
Yeah, it was really traumatic because there was so much disharmony and so much fighting, for the silliest of things.
Yeah.
Just because I wanted to do my keyboard part, or Debbie wanted to do her vocal part. Again, like, there was no room for any flexibility with Kevin.
Yeah, like, everybody thought that album is so important, which it is not.
Well, for us, it was important.
Yeah. Next album we did, that was and then came Dreamcatcher, right?
Yeah,
that was the first real album that we did as a band.
It was in year
It
2012
felt like that.
when I met Michael Wagner at a convention in Hamburg, Altona.
Yeah.
Where, like, I was really impressed because at that time Kevin was still living with us.
Yep.
And I went to him with this convention because he was really into gear and engineering. I was, like, naturally interested in that topic too. So we went to this, I don't know, keynote from Michael Wagner workshop. And there he talked a lot about his style, and he was like the complete opposite of Kevin's style.
Yeah. And he was a complete opposite, and he was a legend already, of course, a producer legend. So we knew that the stuff that came from him, that he was talking about, is the truth. That the stuff that he's telling us, that's gonna work. And so we had somebody to really rely on. And that was like it was really liberating for us.
And
in many aspects.
this was the album we recorded at home and then sent the tracks over to Michael and went to America to record the tracks.
We recorded it at home, but it was already, like, kind of co-produced with Michael, because we held a lot of we phoned a lot already with him. Like, I can remember, like, Michael, how any advice of how I should mic my cab, and he would help me exactly find the right spot for the mics. He told us to use a ribbon mic and an SM57, which we knew nothing about before. Like, that was an industry standard, but we knew nothing about it. And just little details like that.
Yeah. I think it started, like, in the middle of 2012, and then we, like, took the time to record everything. except the vocal part,
Mm-hmm.
which then we recorded finally in
In
the
Wire World.
later half of 2012 at
Yeah.
Wire World in Nashville.
I think it was like in November where the vocals were recorded.
It took us a lot of financial struggles as well to get all the
Mhm.
money together.
Yep.
Be able to. I can remember it was like 2 weeks before we should fly actually, and we didn't have the money yet. I was like, it was a really shitty feeling not to be able to do it, because we thought, okay, we can give it up because we don't like have all the funds together. But then, luckily, a friend of us lended us money, and so we could do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really turbulent time also for us, because we started something new, started on going into new paths, and all like this was always this uncertainty, which we didn't have the assurance.
Mm-hmm. Right, yeah. And we wanted to talk about sound. Like, I think I should mention that the sound, of course, changed a lot from spirit metal to Dreamcatcher, because it went as the album name suggests, we wanted to have that metal sound with spirit metal, and then Dreamcatcher was more like a rock approach. And I think we were kind of like in a hippie phase, in like a retro hippie phase at that point.
We were really into the 70s rock and metal at that time.
Mm-hmm.
We had this ideal of Deep Purple,
Yeah.
sort of Led Zeppelin, and at that time also there was this big retro wave
Mm-hmm. Right, with
in
Blues
the
Pills
music industry.
came.
So I think it was just coming naturally
Yeah.
for us. So Dreamcatcher was a lot of like these elements going into this album.
Right. Next album, Free.
Free was also produced with Michael Wagner, but this time the whole production was done in Tennessee
Mhm.
with him, and we had to eat every day sushi.
Yeah, right. But sound-wise, there is a big difference between Dreamcatcher and Free. Like, Free just really, like, I don't want to brag about it or anything, but I think it's pretty safe to say that Free is a world-class production and sound. Even though to this point it has not yet made it into the big breakthrough for us as a band.
If you
Like,
listen to
nonetheless, like, just the sound and the production. Like, maybe you don't like the songwriting, maybe you don't like this and that, the guitars, vocals, or whatever, or the sound, but you can't say that the production and the sound is bad. Like,
I think it's really unique,
Yeah.
especially for a European band. And I think any
it's
band,
unique and it's pristine, and it's just
because Michael, at the time when we produced with him, he was like into the business already 40 years.
yeah.
And after, like, in the retrospect, when I listen to Free today, it still like blows me away.
Yeah, me too.
When I listen
Like,
to
it
the
keeps
first
getting
song
better, actually.
and I listen to like all these sounds and all this creativity that went into it,
Mm-hmm.
um,
And with such an ease. Like, there was never a blockage or something. It was just always a flow in the production. I don't know. It wasn't like a particularly fast production.
I think it took us 6 weeks or so. It was really,
Yeah, but that was just because that's how Michael liked to work.
yeah,
He could have done it faster if he wanted to, but
that's just his pace of
yeah,
working.
that's just how he wanted to work. Like, he took big breaks for lunchtime, like, so 2 or 3 hours. There was nothing unusual for him to just take a break. And then like stopped at 5 o'clock in the evening, just because we were all getting kind of tired.
Mm.
And then it doesn't make sense to keep working if you're getting tired, right? So that's the reason why it took so long, because it was just like
And I think the
laid-back
main
approach.
difference between Dreamcatcher and Free was because Dreamcatcher we recorded all by ourselves except
Mhm.
for the vocal parts, and with Michael Wagner we, for every song we switched the snare, or we switched
Mhm.
the guitar sound, switched something around, so the album is just more lively and more
colorful.
More colorful because every song has a unique sound. And with Dreamcatcher, every sounds with free there's just more color in that album.
Yeah,
because of this reason.
Let's go on. After 3 we did Fire and Ice, right? No, we did a little EP, but I think we can leave that away.
It was also done with Michael Wagner in 2015. It's called Dreamer.
Yeah, that's the EP.
There's only 3 songs on it. Like, 2 of our own and then
one cover song.
What was it again?
Oh, God. The idea for the cover song came from our distribution label manager at that time. I forgot his name. So it was Thomas something. And he suggested that we do a song.
I can't remember the name.
I can't even remember.
This was an old one.
Yeah.
At that time, we didn't know much about covering songs, so we just copied it 1-to-1 because we thought it has to be copied 1-to-1 from the original artist.
Stupid.
But
we got a lot smarter since then.
Yeah. Then 2000. It was actually really busy years because 2014 we made. 2013 Dreamcatcher was released. Then 2014 3 was made. Mm-hmm. We released it the next year. The same year we produced the EP, and the next year 2016 we made Blue Eyes.
Right.
And Blue Eyes was produced with Andrea Tokic, which we already talked about this retro sound.
Yeah. I think we can skip the Blue Eyes part.
And then...
So we went from having like a modern hard rock sound with Michael to having a like really lo-fi, garagey kind of Black Keys kind of sound with Blue Eyes. And that album really it really hit a spot with some people. Because I can remember Napalm Records.
We released it the next year, 2017, so it's really...
Yeah, the A&R guy from Napalm Records wrote me that he really liked that album and that we really did a good job on that album. And we had a lot of good feedback with Blue Eyes.
Like, I think it was all in the top 30.
Yeah, it had the best chart position of all our albums, actually.
Yeah.
And that's partly because of luck, but probably also, and of course, it was a different time. 2016, I think, was released. It was easier to sell physical.
It was like the
CDs.
last days where you could like make a meaningful sale with CDs and vinyl. I think vinyl is still going strong relatively.
I think it was like 2015, 16. That was like the
turning point. Where like the digital just took over.
Yep.
To this point where we have today, where like almost nobody buys CDs anymore.
Yeah. Not even us.
Like there's not CDs player around where you can play it.
Right. So then from Blue Eyes we did Fire and Ice, and we switched the producer again. Because actually we wanted to do the next album with Andrea Tokic, because we really liked it to work with him. But for some reason, he said, like, no, let's take a break. Take some more time. He didn't want to do the next album immediately with us. He wanted to take a break of a couple of years and then do the next album. And we just didn't agree with that. Like, we wanted to just keep pushing. And we had some success with Blue Eyes. And I think... that's when we switched, right? To Dave Batchel.
I think we were not that satisfied with the retro sound because we were going in a new direction.
Yeah, that too.
Musically. Like we were getting more harder.
Mm-hmm. Again, like, because that's where we came from.
Yeah.
We came from...
We started really with like metal, basically, with Wolves of Wodan. And then we got into that retro rock. And then we come back with Fire and Ice. And it just like gradually increased in hardness, I guess.
Yeah, it does.
We worked with David Batchel in 2017, the same year we released the album. We also produced a new one, the Fire and Ice one. There was also made in Nashville in the Southern Ground, the Southern Ground era, I would call it.
Yeah.
And this one was actually quite good. Actually,
I think the Fire and Ice is like an in between. It was a much more modern approach of production. And the funny thing is that Dave Batchel, our producer, like he is not a heavy guy at all.
No, it's like church choirs and
like pop
church
music and church music and that kind of stuff. So he comes from a completely different world, but he's so good at what he's doing.
He's very musical.
He can do anything.
And he's like has a really good ear for tuning, and a good ear for melodies as well. Like he can, it's just like out of his head, he can
make like an arrangement for
backing arrangements. Yeah, and he is like very gifted producer.
Absolutely.
And he brought a bit more this. I don't know what did he bring in the production.
He brought back a bit more of that Michael Wagner approach. Just we went back to recording on click. I don't know, just.
And it was actually really.
Nice, there's downsides to the Blue Eyes album. Like the bass track, it's almost not audible as an instrument. Like you can't hear any notes. The album feels good; it has a great sound, but it's really hard to distinguish certain sounds in there. So there's kind of this muddiness, right?
Yeah.
And Fire and Ice is completely defined. Like you can hear every instrument. Same thing with Change the World, also with Dave Bechtel. I think was produced in 2019.
That was the next one, the Change the World one.
Yeah.
That's actually
at that point we said album. Like, okay, we want to drop all this retro shit. Like that's
that's
not us anymore.
Like Change the World, like turn out a lot of affinity to 80s metal and 80s hard rock. At least that's what the newspaper wrote about it.
Yeah.
They said it sounds like a lot of like.
They still said it sounds retro, but at least not. At least we didn't have that hippie stuff in there anymore, like with Dreamcatcher.
Yeah, it's a bit more hard, and the first time with the keyboards work, I switched more to electronic, like to the Moog and to other synthesizer plugins. Prior to that, I only have used the Hammond organ. Mainly, like the main instrument was Hammond organ from like
which I still like because I still like I still like Spiritual Beggars, for example. I just really like that heavy sound, but but you wanted to go more into the synthesizer world, and I like that too.
I guess I just wanted to try something new because when you like record 50 albums of the same sound, it's just like, okay, it's time for something new. Let's go on.
Of course.
And the Change the World was the album that is the transition between using Hammond organ on every track to using more synth sounds.
Which is the newest album right now, Bullshit.
The latest album that came out.
Did you even use any Hammond organ on Bullshit?
I used it much more sparingly than on Change the World. So Bullshit is coming out end of June.
Yeah.
So the first single is coming out next month in February. And
Bullshit is gonna have a completely different. I don't want to say completely different.
Before we talk about Bullshit, let me just say something on Change the World first.
Okay.
We produced that in 2019. It was like the last pre-Corona year, and we wanted to actually release it pretty soon. I think we wanted to release it actually 2020. No, it wasn't it?
Something like that, yeah.
The next year, but then just Corona hit, and
because we met a new manager and everything was looking just awesome.
We had Iron Media production,
right? Yeah,
with Chris Klimek, and he like really was fond of the band. And he wanted to get us a bit more popular, and more
Yeah,
into
like-
the public
Right.
eye. But then just Corona just completely destroyed everything, like all hopes
Mhm.
of releasing the album.
Yeah, because we didn't know when to release it. Like, I think a lot of bands had that problem, probably. Like, just so much uncertainty of what's the best time. Like, is there going to be another lockdown here in Germany? So it turned out it took like 2 years from that point. When did we release it?
So
Eventually.
2020 was completely dumpster fire.
Yeah.
Then 21 also was like
But I think
Which
we
is
did
prepared.
release it in 2021,
the
right?
beginning of 2022 we released then Change
Okay.
World.
Okay, so it did take 2 years.
It was just like shortly before all the lockdown
Mm-hmm.
measures were taken away.
Yeah.
And the mask mandates vanished.
And there's something else is different with Change the World. That's the first album where we really hit another level with the music videos that we did. Change the World, for especially.
This was the first time we started to work with a professional
Yep.
video, what's it called, production company, with RVR Studios from Berlin. And you can watch the video. Change the World was like it's the one of the best videos we ever made.
Yeah.
We hired an entire lab group of post-apocalyptic role-playing nerds, and they played the parts in the video, and we dressed up like we had a costume made for this post-apocalyptic scenario, and we even had like bikes and cars. It was really like so elaborate and so sophisticated, this video. You
Yeah.
should really check it out. It was a lot of effort and work that went into the production of this.
Yeah, and and I'm not the only one that's saying this. There's actually comments in YouTube of people saying that the videos that we did for Change the World, and especially Change the World itself, that video, is like far better than that of many bigger bands. Like, if, for example, if you take AC/DC, like, I love AC/DC, but the last video is just boring.
They don't put much effort
Like,
in
no,
it.
they don't
anymore.
care about that.
They don't need to,
No,
actually.
they don't need that.
And we are in an age right now where many bands are considering, do we even need a music video because of TikTok and
Yeah.
other streaming platforms, where you just like post like simple videos with where you sing to your song, and that generates more organic reach than
Yeah, it's
doing
far cheaper, easier to do.
It's far cheaper, yes. You can do a lot of more of that.
Okay, let's go to bullshit.
So maybe you should explain why we call it bullshit in the first place.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So after all this Corona bullshit that took place, we just said it's all bullshit. Like all the lies that were told by the media, like all the wrong information put out there, and you just like actively, for the first time in history, you actively saw like there's a big manipulation going on, and this is just like our feeling after all this Corona madness stopped, that we had after, like, we started producing the album 2022. That was just shortly after the Corona shit.
Yeah, and I think I should mention something. Like, this is not, when we say something like that, like there's manipulation going on, it's not about saying that everything is a big conspiracy or something like that. But it's, you just can't, it's almost impossible to neglect that there was agenda, and that there was manipulation going on from the media. Like, it's just that's just the way it was.
Yeah, it definitely,
Like, there is a bias,
lot of
and that bias was just
lot of interest groups that profited from that.
yeah. Like,
And
that's no conspiracy. That's just the truth.
anyone who
And that's the bullshit.
does not see it,
Doesn't want to see it.
doesn't want to see it because he really wants to believe the mainstream narrative. But
Like, we're not saying that the virus didn't exist or anything like that. Like, that's not what it's about.
it's just about the the amount of manipulation that went into, like, for instance, the government scaring people to death about this so deadly virus is also another thing. Like, they knew it was not that bad, but they made an effort to scare people into submission. And that's just like the bullshit for me. And also, like, I had this really bad personal experience 2022 where I took the
vaccination,
the vaccination, because I trusted in the I thought to myself, it can't be that bad. Millions of people take it, and then I had severe, I don't know if severe, but really there were side effects.
It was really concerning. Let's just put it that way.
And like, I had sleeping issues. I had this really strange pain in my chest.
Yeah.
And I went to the doctor. The doctor told me, "Oh, it's just part of the side effects.
It's just in your mind. You're just imagining that."
That's what the next thing they said. I came back a few days later. I told them I still have these symptoms. "Oh, it's just in your mind. Are you stressed?" "Yes, I'm stressed." "Okay, it's because of the stress." And then I asked them, "Can you report it to the government that I have side effects?" "No, we're not going to do that." And at that moment, I just realized it's so fucked up. Because there is no empirical, like, you always think of doctors of, like, they're scientific, they're empirical, but it's just prejudice. So they just, like, thought that there cannot be symptoms. It's far too improbable that I should have experienced symptoms. Like, it's a 1 in a million chance. Why should I have it? Like, that's what the doctor told me.
I know.
And
I took the vaccination at the same time. We were actually in the same room. We had the same product.
Like the same
Johnson
charge.
Was it the Johnson?
No, we took the, what's the other called? Novavax.
And I didn't have anything. So,
and the thing about it was, like, for the first few weeks, I thought I was going mad, because I thought, okay, maybe I'm just, like, imagining this. Maybe it's just all in my head, and that was, like, really a fucked up thing for me to think. But at some point, when everybody tells you it's nothing, then you start to believe maybe I'm the problem.
Yeah.
But luckily, it went away after half a year or a few months.
Really took quite some time.
It took like 3 months for me to sleep, to get back to a normal sleep pattern. And the pain in the chest, I think it took like several months to go away.
Okay.
And that's all, like, but the vaccination we took because we wanted to go to America to produce the album in the first place. So all this experience we had of the corona pandemic and all this, what happened to us, it's all factored into the song Bullshit and into the album Bullshit.
Yeah.
And this time Bullshit is a lot harder than anything else we have ever produced.
It's it partly has to do with the guitars being tuned down.
I'm not using, like, Hammond. I'm only using a few tracks. The riffs are just harder. The riffs are harder. The themes harder.
The lyrics.
We also did some about.
And there's another thing different about Bullshit is we really emphasized the melodies and in the vocals. Like, we really took like a microscopic look when writing them. That this time we made sure to have really nice melodies.
And we also worked with Debbie on the vocal parts much more thoroughly than we have done before, to like really refine melodies, like make melodies that actually stick inside your head.
Because I guess that's the most important thing in a song. Like, in the end, it can have a really heavy sound, it can have a pop sound, whatever, but what it all comes down to is that it has a really good melody. Or if you have a hip-hop song, then
the melody, and also maybe, like, is it interesting enough for me? If I would like be some stranger and listen to this band, WolveSpirit, would it be for me interesting enough to keep listening to it? And that's like the criteria I always apply to the songs. Would it be interesting enough? Like, would this melody be catching me enough to like listen to it more than 30 seconds?
Yeah.
That because we live in an age, it is the way it is. Like, we cannot change it. That we have this really fast consume culture, like this age of information. But if something is not appealing to you in the first few seconds on watching it on social media, then you won't likely pursue it. But if you can catch the attention of people, that's a game changer for music.
Okay, you're right.
Like, I'm not saying that you should solely rely on it, because there's still like the spirit and art you make, because some people are just relying on this attention catching techniques. But if you just rely on that, it becomes soulless. But if you don't rely on it, your music won't be heard. So you have to make a compromise out of it.
Right.
Like, take your message, the energy of the song, or the love you can put in it, and then try to refine it and improve it to make it a really good song. Actually, a good pop song, a good metal song, whatever.
Well, I guess we got through this.
Yeah.
All our albums.
So we're in the present now.
Yep.
And in a few weeks, the new Robot song will be released.
Yeah. Go ahead and check it out. We'll keep you posted. I guess like, subscribe, and all that. And see you next time.
And if you want to if you want to know more about your music, just check out the link below. There you can find all albums, or just go on Spotify, music, YouTube, whatever. It's all there to listen to.
Yeah. Bye.
Thanks for watching, and see you next time.